The very fact that we are present here today just again supports this view that whatever happens in this world, it all starts with ideas and thoughts. And what was very far away, or maybe not so far away, in 1990s, he and she and he, I don't know, say they, she and he, Elena Mikhailовna and Yuri Petrovich, as personalities, thought they would start the School of Political Studies so that people could exchange ideas, come to get to know oneself in the opening world, meet one another, so that they would have idea about universal space where everyone can find one's own meaning. A stone, when it's thrown into the water, makes waves. Ideas work in the same way if they are valuable and they come from the depth. And it's reasonable. And the ideas of the school spread. This is what is being said in this very wide situation. It happened this way because that was not just making school happen, it was creating this school. And this practice that then spread not only in post-Soviet space, it's now present in Transcaucasus and the Balkans, in Central Europe, and it also crossed the Mediterranean, and it is now present in Africa. We have schools in Tunisia, Morocco, and this initiative may take over elsewhere. Today, the number of schools of political studies are 22 in this family. And the very fact that we are present here in Jurmala and tomorrow will be in Strasbourg, or we may meet in Berlin or elsewhere, this is all thanks to the idea that was born in Moscow. What I can prove here, what she said, Yelena Mikhailовna, what she said, that the structure and this situation that emerged in Armenia, what was the influence of the Moscow school upon that? This is what I have to tell you. We have 400 graduates of Armenian school. One of them is present here. 30 out of them, in some way or another, after the revolution that Armenia saw last year, are now taking some positions in government. 10 of our graduates are now members of the parliament after the revolution. This is all thanks to just Moscow set up their school, and this initiative spread. Yerevan started its own school, but these people would meet one another in the school. Armenia, and Andrei Alexandrovich just said that Armenia is a small country. But many of our graduates would come up to our school, would talk to one another, would meet, know our friends, and if one of them went into government, I don't know, he's now, for example, in charge of the immigration department, he took up 2 more, they would recommend one another. It's some kind of network. So this is how things stand. As they meet in their school, and they would take on, recommend one another.
7 of these schools of political studies and civil education act in the post-Soviet countries, and I will say just a few words about the Armenian experience in the post-Soviet years. You may have heard about the developments in the political situation in Armenia last year. Some call it a Velvet Revolution, which was certainly a consequence of the general emotion of the society and its wish to change the political situation in the country. I believe it has been for the first time after the USSR, the Soviet Union, is that the huge wealth was up for plundering, because the large wealth across 1/6 of the globe was literally in the focus of the so-called privatization, and indeed led to the great discontent among peoples, which in part may have been the consequence of the presidential form of government, which has been adopted in most of the post-Soviet states, whereas the great contrast in the income and influence led to this distortion of political situation, whereby oligarchs were, in a matter of 10 years, possessing 80% of the national wealth. Clearly, the so-called imitation democracy also played a part. And I'm saying, and I'm calling this imitation democracy because in form, elections were taking place either as elections of the president or the parliament, and there were international monitoring organizations which were de jure calling them democratic elections, but which were de facto based on hereditary precepts or hereditary law, although unwritten. So this oligarchy, while it was declared that this is a liberal democratic system, however, this political system was not open to access by the public, but has been indeed a part of the privileged few. And indeed, each round of elections was accompanied by the popular dissatisfaction, and indeed Armenia faced this situation whereby 10% of the population emigrated from the country. The Armenian state debt was almost 3 times as high as the GDP, which meant that the state debt was indeed rested on the shoulders of the future generations of the Armenians. Finally, according to the so-called happiness index, Armenia was in the last lines according to this rating. Now, this is not quite an objective, of course, rating, and I could say in Egypt you could see that people live worse or in greater poverty than in Armenia. However, they would have a higher appreciation of their lives. However, what is the problem here? The problem is about higher education. Armenian society has more or less a high university or college education, and people were dissatisfied with the way they lived. Anyway, jokes put aside, this became a locomotive of change. In a matter of several years, the college graduates from Armenia who have graduated from the top universities in the world and have indeed brought a lot of experience to them. The young people generally have and continue to be getting good education. However, the oligarchy was in stark contrast to this overall situation, and this erosion of legality became one of the greatest problems in the republic. Throughout several years, at the level of the speakers of the parliament, the so-called pro-governmental faction in the government kept maintaining that they have to cross the Melik Adamian Street and join the ruling party. So it was indeed an attempt to build a single-party party, which was quite in line with the Soviet, pretty much communist approach. most public activists and those young people who got their education abroad were curbed and did not have much place in the Armenian society. This was the situation that we were facing as late as 2 years ago. The young people started to the streets. The rallies paralyzed the country. Mr. Nikol Pashinyan, the leader of this movement, showed that he is open-handed. So everybody was going to these streets, showing that they have that their hands are empty. They don't carry rocks. They don't carry guns. They do not carry Molotov cocktails, and indeed everything was done to preclude and to rule out bloodshed. On the first day when I saw on the streets of Yerevan when the military joined the protesters, I told my colleagues either the government would shoot the people or the government would step down. And I have photographs on the flash card from this revolution of last year. The government decided to step down, and for almost 18 months, we are seeing in Armenia situation of political political turmoil in a way, which, of course, is the consequence that the situation that was present in Armenia was no longer untenable. However, the future is not quite clearly defined. There's a lot of uncertainty. There is no post-Soviet mentality in Armenia. That is certainly to be said. On the other hand, there is also this everyday interest as to what is happening in other post-Soviet republics. Of course, we are keenly interested in what is happening in Russia, in the Ukraine, in Georgia, in Belarus. What weapons is Belarus selling to Azerbaijan, or what is happening? But the general sense that we follow single path of development is in this sense making Armenia, of course, a part of this single space. The national identity has been compounded with the political dimension or the political identity as a factor of subjectivity. And today, when Armenia has faced the choice of entering the Eurasian customs union, this decision was not an easy one to take, not only because of the economic reasons, but because of the matters of security, which is a concern, of course, which is still faced by Armenia. However, we have to take into consideration that the post-Soviet states have political and economic interests which allow nations to seek for solutions which would be of interest to all, from energy policies through to the interface in defense area and humanitarian cooperation. But the question that certainly is in the agenda today is machines, cars. When Armenia became a member of the Eurasian Union, because Armenia had 12,000 entrepreneurs which were registered as car dealers, there is not much industry left in Armenia. So these car dealers were allowed to continue for another 5 years. And in this sense, Armenia was different from Russia, Belarus, Kyrgyzstan, and Kazakhstan. And now we're seeing that cars are about $4,000 to $5,000 less than in other post-Soviet countries. So, from Kazakhstan, from the North Caucasus, there are many people coming to Yerevan to buy automobiles because they do it because this way they are overcoming the customs tariffs which exist in other member states of this Eurasian Union. And when I'm asking, are you selling them bad cars? But in fact, because these cars have to move to Kazan from Yerevan. So if it's a bad car, so this is what we're seeing in the post-Soviet states. So what we're seeing in this Eurasian Union is wheeler-dealer mentality. But the important thing that what I would like to stop at, in a matter of 15 to 20 years, we will see that the elites who were born and raised in the Soviet Union will start to go away. These elites, which still had a single approach to many things, because they were coming from the single society, which was at that time the Soviet society. And I could already sense it about 25 years ago when I was I was a student at that time. And what is your favorite film? My teacher would ask, and I was saying a Mimino film. That's by a Georgian film director. What is Mimino? This UN English teacher was asking. She has never heard about it. And then I understood that we, people who are in this hall, people from one country, we still had a cultural code. We are in one and the same cultural space. We still have or had a common language now, but we have to realize that this time will go away. As the time goes on and the political elites of old are gone, we shall see generations which may go away. My generation of Armenians still speaks Russian better than any other foreign language. The generation of my sons speak better English and French than Russian. And indeed, we are seeing this great evolution. For good or for bad, it is really not a matter of discussion. We are seeing some evident social change, which we all have to be prepared for, creating a basis for a new democratic civil society is great important. Throughout these years, we have tried to find these solutions within our school. And we have continued to practice and continued to discuss democracy with our colleagues from Bulgaria, Romania, the Balkans. But it is clear that we speak with greater ease with those with whom we have some cultural closeness. And in this sense, I think that it is a capital which should be used for the benefit of our nations, to use those things which still unite us. And I do hope that the cultural space will continue to exist. Thank you.